Hello and welcome to the video. I know quite a few have been waiting quite a long time for this one. This is my full flight review and overview of the Heewing T2 CRUZA. Now, I've done a couple of videos already where I've showed you an unboxing, talked about my initial impressions, and also gone through the build. I'll put links down below to both of those. This, however, is going to focus on what it's been like to fly. Now, the winds have finally left the UK and the rain has too. We've actually been able to get out and fly the thing. Just a couple of things before we get into the flight. The aileron movement on this is default 25mm, but actually isn't bad. The elevator is set for 22mm and the rudder is set for 18mm. To be honest, I thought that the aileron at 25 and the elevator at 22 were going to be too much, but actually in the flying I've done here, they seem about right. I have also set up my flaps here. I did get the optional servos and connection rods, and also designed and 3D printed some catches for the sides of the nose. It looks like there were recesses designed to take something like that already, but I 3D printed them just because it's the only part of the model that you would have to use a screwdriver to take apart. I have used that SpeedyBee F405 wing flight controller in this and a Magtech GPS in the back, and it's currently running iNav 6.1.1 as per my regular setup videos that I do all the time. It does have walk snail in the nose for this, and again, see the build video, I'll link below if you want to see exactly how it's all set up. So, what's it like to fly? Well, the first thing to talk about is the fact that my flying buddy Adam, who helped me for this particular bit of footage, massive thank you to my flying buddy Adam for being there for both moral support and to run the hat cam, was that when he hand launched it, the default throttle was set to 1500 for the auto launch in iNav. That was easily enough to almost pull it out of his hands, and then it went immediately to a maximum throttle of 1900, and that had easily enough thrust to get this quite heavy model into the air without any problems. So let's go through the actual numbers and my scoring system. Again, I use this so that you can do direct comparisons between stuff that I do here rather than it all being subjective and a bit woolly. First thing we need to talk about then is how is it at slow speeds. Now this is a relatively heavy model, but it has quite a big wing area. In our playing here, it gets a nice 3-star, and that equates to it will go just under 20 miles an hour, but not much without the flaps deployed. If you deploy the flaps, then you can get a little bit slower, not a huge amount. So this is a model that likes to be above about 20 miles an hour, so you need a reasonable area to come in and approach to land, although the landings we've done here, it has done it quite softly. In terms of high speed, this is not a burner at all. Maximum current draw with wide open 100% throttle is about 75 miles an hour. So it just scrapes a 1-star. And while it had that full throttle going at 75 miles an hour, it was pulling about 31.4 amps or about 733 watts according to iNav. So this isn't something I would recommend that you get if you are a speed demon. The power system is absolutely set up for lots of static thrust for easy hand launches, and it's also set up for efficiency too, which leads me beautifully onto the next one. Efficiency. This gets a whopping 4.5 stars, much more than I expected. It can fly for around 25 minutes on the battery that I'm using here, which is a 3000 milliamp hour pack. It takes about 500 milliamp hours every 4 minutes or so. So with much slower flying where you were being more gentle and careful with the efficiency, because obviously the slower you fly, the less amperage you're going to pull, you could easily do over 30 minutes with a model like this with a relatively standard 6S battery. However, if you put a really big 6S battery in, with it only taking about 4 minutes to use up 500 milliamp hours, you could stay in the air for quite a long time. Again, you're not going to be able to ease off the throttle and float around. It's not going to let you do that because it needs to be over 20 miles an hour, but it will only pull about 4 to 5 amps if you're just cruising at about 30-40% throttle. Noise is very, very good as well. These props are super quiet, and you tend to find that efficient models have quieter props. That noise is energy that's been bled out of the system and not being able to use for thrust. So if you can hear a lot of prop noise, then you are wasting energy. This is not like that at all. You can hear it when it's in close, but once it's about 20-30 meters away, you're really struggling to hear it at all. This is definitely a setup that's all around static thrust and efficiency, not speed, and it works very well for that. In terms of toughness, I've given this a 4-star. There are 0 issues with mine. It still looks exactly the same despite the flying that we've done with it. It survives most crashes with little damage. It is a pretty heavy model, so you do need to treat it with a little respect when compared to its smaller brother, the T1. I'm still waiting for that vertical tail to take a good enough hit to damage the servo. Talking about the rudder authority is absolutely terrible. Those throws that I talked about at the top of the video are absolutely great, with the exception of the rudder. It's very lackluster. If you want more rudder authority, you're going to have to work out a way to get more movement out of that rudder. Acrobatics, it only really gets a 2-star. It's very similar to the T1. If you're using these default throws, if you put it in manual mode, you can get loops and rolls and things like that. There's lots of static thrust, which helps it in those kind of maneuvers. But again, you're not going to be able to do lots and lots of speed into your loops to carry it through. You're going to have the throttle wide open for stuff like that. This hasn't been designed for those kind of acrobatics. Room inside, this gets a 4-star, which is a surprising score considering how physically large this is. So there's room inside for the flight controller and other pieces, with room to spare for lots of cables, etc. This would have been a 5-star rating, but there are some odd things inside. For example, the flight controller tray position is a bit weird. The size isn't big enough to put a wing flight controller front to back easily. The HDF PV mounting in the nose is weird. The fact that they are supplying a fan to provide cooling with a model that's flying at 30 miles an hour in air is just wacky. There are some odd decisions that they've made with this. And finally, in terms of travel and breakdown, this almost gets a full 5 stars. It would have done if they'd have had some kind of clips for the nose. It easily breaks down into the smaller parts with some basic tools. However, this would have been a 5-star if they've had those clips. It easily fits into the boot of my MX-5. In summary, you might think that the control surface movement by default is too much. I would keep it as it is. The only thing I would maybe do is try and give yourself a little bit more for the rudder if you want to use it like that. It is quite nimble on the stock throws and it does need them. It does fly like a big T1, which does beg the question, is it worth twice what a T1 is? And I guess now you've seen it fly, you can decide that for yourself. I'm personally still not sure who this is aimed at. The T1 is such a fab little twin, and there are a lot of opportunities when making a bigger T1 model to really innovate and bring us something really different. I'm not personally a fan of the nose. I think having a fan included to keep the HDF-BV kit cool is crazy. I'm not a fan of the vertical tail section. That rudder potentially is going to get hit at some point and potentially damage the servo, and turns out it doesn't really do a lot as well. 6S is a good choice if you want to use regular flight controllers. Most of the regular stuff I'm using here, like the Speedy Bee that's inside, will not fly on 8S. However, having a 4S version, although Heewing do say that you can fly it on 4S, but you're going to have to be very committed to your launch. But I would have thought that something like an 8S power system where you can put 2S, 4S batteries side by side would have made a lot of sense. That would have reduced the current draw a little bit more. And the only thing with this is that so far the props are good. They do drop down below the body. However, mine are surviving fine. I'm sure that there's a VTOL version on the way. I haven't heard that directly from Heewing, but after all of the success of the T1 VTOL version, they'd be crazy not to add it on this. There's some very stiff competition for things like the T1 and the Atom RC Swordfish for these kind of FPV twins. And I expect this exists because so many pilots love the T1 and asked Heewing for a bigger version. Personally, I'd have been more excited if they'd have brought out some optional upgrades for the existing T1, things like longer wings to give us more wing area and lower wing loading for more soaring and efficient flying, a longer tail and a longer body to support bigger batteries and easier positioning of things like the flight controller, and then push the tail out even more with a rudder support maybe, and that would make the central gravity options a little bit easier too. And that, having those all mix and match, would have been great. I think lots of us would have been very happy with that version. My friend put it together really well as we were walking off the field. Adam turned to me and said, "You know what this is? This plane needs a job." And he's right. I think you'd only get this if you had a specific usage in mind. I think being so much more expensive than the T1, it's only going to be worth it to you if you already have a job that you want it to do. But if you want a larger model that's easy to hand launch and very efficient, and the T1 is too small for you, then this is one of the options. Thank you for watching the video. If you watch my videos and find them useful, then please take a moment to hit the like and subscribe button. It helps the channel a lot. If you really like what I'm doing here, you can become a Patreon and support the time I spend helping others and get access to lots of exclusive benefits. Link is in the video description. Remember that all the videos on the channel are organized into playlists, so you can easily use those playlists to find all the videos on a subject that you are interested in. Add Painless 360 to your searches on Google and YouTube, and it'll help you find my content for any particular topic. Thanks again for watching, and as always, happy flying.